Welcome to the JV Media Institute Digital Drop-In. This is Sarah, your lead instructor, and I'm here with Justin as usual.
Hey everyone, welcome, thank you.
So before we get started, I just want to go over some basic housekeeping for anyone who's newer to our webinars. As we go through the topics today, you can either chat in your questions, and we will be paying attention to the chat, or you can use the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we're glad to pay attention to that as well and answer questions as we go along. Also, everyone who's registered will get a copy of the recording as well as the slides, so don't feel like you have to remember everything or write everything down. You'll get copies of all of this after the fact so that you can go back and listen to things that were interesting to you, or even click on different links that you want to explore. And for those of you who are joining us from the online classroom, these will be posted to your classroom basically tomorrow at some time. So you will also get a copy of the slides and the recordings. But I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because I feel like a lot of times at the end of the year, some of us, if we've got campaigns in motion, they're already happening. And at least for me, I get to breathe a little in December and really think about what I worked on in 2019, what was the most impactful thing, what were things that I saw while I was doing different projects that were really working or not working or that changed. And I think it's a really good idea for everybody to think about taking that time at the end of the year to really figure out what did you learn and how can you take what you learned and roll it into your 2020 strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and let Justin take it away and share some of his thoughts, and then I'll follow up at the end. And like I said, please feel free to contribute any questions or thoughts to the chat or the Q&A. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm excited to share some of the learnings that I've had this year. Sarah asked me to come up with some things that I've learned, and I came up with 4 or 5 ideas, and I'm going to bring those up and share them with you. So one thing we've done this year, we've been working on conference marketing and large event marketing since the beginning. It's been part of our business since we started in 2011, because I have been helping market a wellness conference that my father helped start since 2004. And so that was one of my first successful projects in digital marketing. And then because of that success, we were able to land SoCap in 2015. So this was our 5th year marketing SoCap. We also landed some marketing for the B-Lab conference, which is called the B Champions Retreat, which was in Los Angeles this year in September. And also some work for the North Carolina Sustainable Agriculture Association and their annual conference, as well as a few others. So now we've gone from marketing 1 when we started the agency to 5 or 6 different conferences with between several hundred and up to 3,000 guests. And a big part of our role in these events is sales strategy, pricing strategy, the timing for all of that, and learning, what works in one event and applying that to the others, so that collectively these events will grow and reach their sales goals more quickly with less marketing investment. So one thing that really stood out this year was historically most of our, when we come to a sales, like a ticket pricing deadline, we often send 2 emails. We used to sometimes send one like 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, and then either 1 or 2 during the final week. And what I'm talking about is these events all have graduated pricing schedules. So some of them have 4 price points, some of them have 5 or 7 price points. And those might be things like super early bird, and then seasonal specials, and then like a last chance discount. And these are different points when at a certain date the price will increase, often by around $100, going up by $100 to $150 on a certain date. Usually those dates are on Thursdays or Fridays for most of the events we work on. So we're talking about how to make sure we get the most sales out of that specific day when the price goes up. So for SoCap this year, we are a little bit behind our sales goal in the summer, and so we decided to try something different, and we sent 3 emails in the same week. We sent the email on Monday. The email on Monday was very simple. In fact, if you just saw the subject line of the email, it told you basically what you needed to know, which was that the price was going to increase on Friday. So it said something like SoCap, price SoCap summer special ending Friday or something like that. And you opened up the email and it just had a short paragraph, graphic, and call to action to buy tickets. Then on Wednesday, we sent an email that was more of a call to action to join the event. It was something like 10 reasons to attend, or an update of who this new speaker announcement or something like that. Would also mentioned the ticket deadline and the urgency of buying by Friday. And then on Friday, we sent what we normally send on Thursday or Friday of every sale, which is just a simple email with a clear call to action, clear subject line, one image, 2 to 3 sentences of text, encouraging people to buy, and then a buy now button, which goes to the registration page. What we noticed this time was that the sales on Monday and Tuesday were better, and then the sales on Thursday and Friday were still strong, as they always are in sales weeks, and that created a better week. So this year, with several of our events, we're going to recommend Monday, Wednesday, Friday emails, at least for every other sales deadline, and ones that are during months when we feel like we're not really competing with much else, and we think that those will drive an extra sale volume that week. And what we did also looked at is that we wanted to make sure that we weren't getting an increasing number of unsubscribes from the list during those weeks. So we checked that out, and it wasn't really many more than normal. So the week specifically, we did this for SoCap in the end of September, early October. So that's what we're finding, is that it worked really well. We're going to try it again, and hopefully it'll work for other events, including maybe even for some of the events we manage that we do ourselves, like our 2-day tourism event in the fall. Next, I was having breakfast with one of my mentors last week. He works for a much larger agency that does a similar work to what JB Media Group does. And he let me know that at his agency, they've actually trademarked a process, and I'm not going to go too deep into what they do, but it really brought to mind for me how I originally sort of positioned JB Media Group. I positioned us around this link. I'm gonna see if I can share it. Oops. Well, you'll get it in the when we send out the slides. You can click on it. This goes to a page on our website that shows basically my philosophy for content marketing, which has content at the middle and then 3 pie slices going out from the center. It's a circle with a small circle in the middle. It says content. And I guess Sarah's going to try to bring it up for me so I can show it.
Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. We're just figuring this out. So bringing this up. So this is something I drew when I started JB Media back in 2010 and 11. And I drew this for one of my business coaches at the time to show him kind of what my philosophy was. I drew this on a piece of notebook paper, which I still have at home in my memorabilia from the company. But I drew this kind of layout. Actually, I drew a more advanced version first, and then we simplified it a little bit to this simpler version. And one way that I think about this is that a piece of content can be used more than once. A piece of content can be used for social media. It can be used as the landing page for advertising, and it can also be potentially used for SEO. Down here you see some of the different tactics and types of work we do inside of these different areas. But when we look at what my mentor was talking about, he was talking about something slightly different. He was talking about when you go in to get a story, get the related stories at the same time. And he used an example of like a NPR journalist going overseas to cover a story. He said they don't just go and get like one interview. They interview maybe 6 or 7 different people related to the story so that they can come back and create one comprehensive story, or maybe even a series of stories. And that is a similar concept to what I originally came up with, but it just reminded me of, to think about it from a different perspective. So we're going to try, I'm going to, talk to my team about this, and we're going to see where we can fit that type of approach more frequently into our work next year. That we can not only capture content that can be distributed through different channels, but sometimes we go into capture one story, we might be able to find a similar story that would be better for a different audience for the same client. If we're going out to capture a video interview, maybe line up several interviews the same day, same place, then you don't have to, necessarily go back there again, which would duplicate the travel time, the planning time, and all the other resources to get a production started, to really capture something that's very related. And then you could weave those together into one piece, or, use them for separate pieces of content. Next thing I want to talk a little bit about is virtual reality. So we started doing SoCap marketing in 2015, and at SoCap 15 I met someone who was already in the virtual reality space and was doing work with other events, and we tried to get that going where that's this guy, I think his name was Christian, I don't remember his last name or what organization he worked for, but we were trying to get him involved to do some VR work at SoCap the following year. I pushed for it through various different channels with the CEO at the time and with the sponsorship guy, and there just wasn't a lot of traction to get it going. So then sort of shelved that, and then a year later I tried again, and I reached out to a couple of VR experts and even got a quote and tried to figure out how we fit it in. That year they decided to use that money for a 10th anniversary kind of magazine almost that was given out to all the attendees, which cost significant resources, and that was where those resources went then. And then the following year, it just I couldn't quite get enough interest in it to get it going. But then this year, I'm not exactly sure what sparked it, but there was a firm that's doing VR in the social impact sector, which is what the SoCap conference is all about, and they were able to get a booth, or large double booth together, where you could go and sit on a swivel chair and watch VR content related to social impact. And I went and sat and watched one of the videos, and I thought it was really well done. And it was really in line with the vision that I had for how the content could be used. So I'm hopeful that next year we can bring them back and maybe even collaborate between them and some of the major sponsors, so that the sponsors can get content produced that's virtual reality style. So the video that I watched at the conference was about this really famous animal sanctuary. I think it's in Utah, I believe. It's called Best Friends, and it's one of the best known animal sanctuaries in the country because of its size and scale and all the different things that they do and some of their very progressive approaches. They have a huge pet cemetery there that's really well done. They have some really great rehabilitation programs for various types of animals. They have some really innovative architecture and enclosure designs that they've done that help make the animals feel safe, but also make the people who are working with them safe and efficient with all their operations. And they work with various types of animals, including horses. So they had good footage of all that, and all this was from the perspective of sitting in a chair where I could turn around and see what they were talking about in 360, which was really cool. So I feel now like I've actually been there. I had talked to a former CEO who came to work for one of the big animal rescues in Asheville, and he talked about everything that they were doing there. And I'm pretty good at like visualizing things when I hear someone, but it's totally different to be able to sit and watch a 10-minute video where you're watching them work with a horse in an enclosure and train the horse, and you're hearing the person who worked with the horse talk about all the the improvements that horse has made since getting there, and how it's become more social and more friendly, and how it's gotten over its traumas that it had from where it was being abused. And then the cemetery, and walking through the cemetery and hearing the wind chimes, which is part of for every animal that dies, they add a wind chime to the trees, and so it's this like very auditory experience. And that was very real, walking through that, and then kind of seeing this big rock cliff and the founder talking and having images appear on the cliff of different things that they've worked on. It felt like almost like an IMAX experience, except I was sitting in a chair, and there was 8 or 10 other people who could simultaneously be watching that or other content. And this whole event is about using money to move social change and launch companies. A lot of them are in different continents, Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, and kind of visualizing what these companies are doing, what kind of investments they're making, what kind of change they're making is difficult to do. But I had previously thought of an idea where we would send a video crew into some of these places where you could see how different it would be for like an employee-owned manufacturing facility versus a sweatshop, or some of the secondary beneficial work that these organizations are doing with training, education, childcare, all the things that make them socially beneficial companies compared to the sort of status quo. Would be much more real if you could see a VR video, or any kind of video really, but a VR video kind of puts you in the place of touring these types of businesses. So hopefully we'll do more of that this year and maybe see it come across more of our other clients as well. But I think it was really cool to see that kind of content for the first time myself at the event in October. And then I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. So the team at JB Media is starting to use a tool called ClearScope, which is an artificial intelligence supported content strategy tool for SEO. And what it does is you can put in a keyword and it looks at the first 30 pages of first 30 results in Google and automatically scrapes them and looks for consistencies in word use, word density, and things like that, which is a lot of what we typically would do ourselves, but that might take hours, and it's prone to human error and missing things and overlooking things. But having a real quick, like almost instant analysis really helps us do our work. It's accelerating the work we're doing on strategy, on outlining pages for clients, or the work we're doing ourselves, and it helps us make decisions when a client asks us, should we include this phrase? And we can say, well, it doesn't appear anywhere in the first 30 results, or yeah, it's actually kind of a common topic that's being talked about, and for this keyword, you should include it. So rather than having to go back and look and click through 30 different or more results in Google and read page after page of information, we can get that answer quickly from a saved report if we've already run it for them, or we can run a report and get it really quickly. We're also using Rev.com's transcription services, we've been using the human transcription, which is $1 a minute and usually takes about 2 to 3 hours for every 10 minutes of content to get it turned around. So if you send a short video, it might be 2 or 3 hours. A longer one might be 6 to 12 hour turnaround time. But now they have an automation service where you can get it a computer generated transcription back instantly for a fraction of the cost. You can just do that one alone for something like, I think it's 5 cents a minute, which is, I think the human transcription service is $1 a minute, which is still pretty affordable, but it's 1/20th as much money to get an AI version, and it's been pretty good. It depends on the quality of the audio, the amount of interference, the accent, and how clear the person's speaking. But when it's clearly spoken content, we're getting back really strong transcriptions, which save hours of time. So that's something we're using. And I have a feeling that I recently been reading about the trends in artificial intelligence and automation and how that will affect professional level work. And there's some indication that the industry thinks, overall industry across all industries, that professional work will be hit the hardest by AI. Things like legal services and consulting services, where artificial intelligence will be able to do the analysis and strategy work that humans typically do faster, better, with less mistakes, less emotional input, more just direct data, which is already happening. It's just the feeling is that services will come out that are really effective and inexpensive and take out a lot of the challenges that people are facing and reduce the costs, and that'll cause people to lose their jobs, which is definitely possible. And there's an indication that content writing and even posting and answering questions online are becoming more and more automated. We're keeping an eye on all those things and trying to understand them and adapt as well, but we're finding also some areas of efficiency in our work where we can do better work, make a better use of our time for our clients, go do deeper and more impactful strategies in the same amount of time because of AI. So it goes both ways, and we're looking into that and trying to make the most of what we can learn and use for our own benefit and our clients. So that's it for my updates for 2020 and what we've learned in 2019. I think Sarah's up next with some of her insights. Thanks, Sarah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I always love hearing about the different things that Justin's team is doing because it's so different from the work that I do pretty much on my own as a one-man team in a lot of cases. So those things are really exciting. So again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to chat them in. Let me see what's going on here. So Bill, I see your question here. My company Monster XP creates cool tech and interactive displays for events, retailers, etc. We're seeing very few companies want to spend the money on VR. We have more AR and motion activated requests. Cost is still an issue with VR, and we expect more AR in 2020.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We haven't seen any AR in the events we work on yet, but I know it's getting more popular in other types of events and other interactive experiences. I personally feel like VR is a better for this specific conference, which is a global entrepreneurship kind of event where it's really hard to understand what these companies are doing in these third world countries and in these other markets well outside of Southern California or Northern California where the event's happening. And these are huge companies. They can probably afford to spend money to do a very simple VR, and it would still have an impact. But it hasn't happened yet. So yeah, and the reason has been cost. So that's definitely accurate.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too that at least in a number of events that I've attended on the East Coast, definitely I think AR is something that people are exploring a little bit more first because the entry level into it is, just like a lower cost to the business or organization. And I do think it's interesting because some of the best sort of VR that I've seen at events is where a VR company kind of partnered as a sponsor and, came in and kind of provided some access to things to give people a taste of what's possible. And so I think those kind of collaborations can work really well. And sometimes, especially with events, you have the opportunity to potentially talk to a company that provides a service like that and think about whether or not they can come on board for the promotional value and the exposure value and give people a chance to sort of see what VR is really like. Because I feel like that's how I first engaged with it, was going to an event. One of the big sponsors had a VR rig and had some really intentional things they wanted people to experience. And I think it allowed a lot of us to experience something we never had before, which was really exciting, and it opened our eyes to a lot of the possibilities which we hadn't seen before. So, but again, I think AR, there's a little less of a barrier. It's something people can do on their phone, and so I definitely think you see that happening at a little bit faster pace or faster, higher rate kind of when it comes to events, having something that people can experience. It's pretty simplistic, but maybe allows them to kind of engage in a different way during the event. I think that's pretty common right now. So again, if there's any other questions, feel free to chat them in or use the Q&A. I'll be paying attention to the actual alerts, and I will answer anything as we go along. I want to basically talk about three main things that got me really excited about this year and that kind of changed my perspective on how I'm doing things, and it's allowed me to think about 2020 and what I'm going to do and what kinds of strategies might be sort of a more unique or innovative approach that not everybody else is doing. And one of the very first ones is that chatbots are much more fascinating and interesting than I ever thought. So I think when the whole chatbot thing first came out, and I was experiencing some chatbot experiences when it came to social media and on different websites with different chats where, for customer service purposes, I'm being walked through kind of an automated system. But what has happened in 2019 is that, to me, the artificial intelligence that runs a lot of the chatbots really advanced this year. It really became more interesting. And, part of what drives the whole chatbot kind of world right now is, one, the customers want support at all times of day for a wide variety of reasons. So giving people what seems like a 24-hour access is kind of a big deal at this point in just the world in general. I thought it was interesting. I read a study yesterday and I couldn't really corroborate the data, so I felt like it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to share. But there was a small study done where they said that over 50% of the people they interviewed expected to have 24-hour access to different types of businesses. And I thought that was a pretty high number of people who, like I said, expect to have their questions answered at all times of the day for a whole number of different reasons. Also, chatbots are, I think, part of really moving into this more personalized experience. And I think what I was convinced of this year is that chatbots can be very personalized and very conversational and very useful and helpful when they're done right. And one of the things that I think really controls that is the understanding that when you put together a chatbot that's going to respond to your customers, a lot of times where the bulk of the work comes in is for the people in the business who work with the customers, who really understand the audiences, for them to put together the flow of how the chatbot will interact. So understanding what choices people will want to have as they go through a conversation with the chatbot, understanding what the most common questions or frequently asked, frequently brought up issues are, all of those things, if you really understand your audiences and why they're using your website, or why they're coming to your Facebook, or why they're coming to your Instagram, you can create these amazing experiences that make it really easy for them to have what is truly kind of a personalized conversation about their needs. So it was exciting to me because I think there's a lot of conversations about whether or not chatbots are going to replace people altogether, whether or not AI can just stand in for us and take over. And I think from a marketing perspective, I really came to the conclusion this year that it can't. Chatbots can't replace us. And chatbots are getting smarter and smarter and better at what they're supposed to do. But a lot of them are really good when they're driven by people who really understand the audience and their needs well. So it's about that flow of information and how you set it up. And that kind of leads me to how I learned a little bit about this, which was really digging into some of the third-party tools that are out there. So Facebook Messenger is, I think, the most common kind of area where people are working in chatbots right now. But I feel like there's all these other third-party tools that can help you build these amazing workflows. And they really allow you to look at conversion. And how do we engage somebody in a more personalized conversation through a chatbot and then get them to convert because we've led them down this path to exactly what they need. And by the time we get them to the end of the path, what we're offering hopefully is so relevant that they want to accept it. And one of the best tools that I was introduced to, and for some of you who maybe listened to the digital drop-in we did on this topic, one of my favorite tools that my guest on that call, Daniel Rock, introduced me to was Mobile Monkey. And I really found it fascinating how easy it was. For me as somebody in marketing who thinks about the audiences, what they need and what they want and how we can save time, become more efficient, all of those things that I pay attention to on a regular basis, how Mobile Monkey really helped me create an experience through chat that would be easy and simple. So I'm excited because I'm still collaborating with Daniel and I'm still getting his feedback, and I'm still recommending him to different clients to work with so that he can share with me kind of what the results are, and it's been really exciting. So this is just a big thing that I'm digging into a lot more in 2020 to figure out how I can better serve people, how I can make myself more available to them in a lot of ways. And since I have been in my industry and in my career for so long, I think I do understand what people need on a deeper level. And so that allows me to come up with a lot of creative ideas about how we could use this. So I've put together just some simple trends that I was studying up on this week that I thought might be of interest. I thought it was interesting. There's over 300,000 chatbots just on Facebook. So again, Facebook is kind of taking a little bit of leadership simply because they made it so easy for businesses to implement this stuff and test it out on their Facebook business page. The top industries for chatbots right now: real estate, travel, education, healthcare, and finance. So I thought that was really interesting, especially because I work in the education world. I also work a lot in tourism marketing, which has to do with travel. And so I see a lot of opportunities for this type of marketing. 80% of businesses are expected to have some sort of chatbot automation by next year. So again, everybody's kind of seeing that the AI involved in chatbots has gotten smarter and that it might be a great way to at least provide really exceptional customer service if we can. By 2025, the market, it'll be over $1 billion a year. And you can see it's growing at almost 25% annually, which I think is a pretty powerful statement. So that's why I feel like now's a great time to explore how this works for you and potentially step into something a little earlier than maybe every other competitor that you have. And then chatbots can save up to 30% in customer support cost. So this is where it's not just a marketing scheme. It's not just a customer service scheme. It can actually help you be more productive when it's done right. Like I said, when you build flows of conversation into these systems, they can be so useful. And then again, if we just look at Facebook Messenger, Facebook Messenger is such a powerful tool. Over 1.3 billion people are using it every month. Again, as of 2018, there were over 300,000 active Messenger bots. Messenger is the third most used app in the world. So I don't know if everybody's aware of that, right? Like, I think it's pretty amazing that Facebook, it's not just their social media app that has gotten all the attention. Their Messenger app is now used all over the globe. A recent Nielsen survey found that people think messaging is the second best way to talk to a business. So people are finding that they would prefer not to call, they would prefer not to email. They would love to chat and get answers to their questions immediately, and then move into some of those other forms of communication after they figure out, what their situation is and how much help they actually need. And people exchange 2 billion messages with businesses over Facebook Messenger every month. So again, Facebook Messenger, if you're using a Facebook business page, this is something that I think is really key to pay attention to in 2020. And if you already have a following on Facebook, if you already have fans there, if you're already working on content regularly, if you're already seeing some level of engagement, I would just consider that you may be able to generate more leads, more conversions if you push people into that messenger conversation and you create flows of conversation that are super useful. So again, I'm watching this in action. I'm very excited about it, how it works. I'm hoping in the coming year, I'm going to be able to implement some of this stuff myself and see how I can use it to my advantage. And I'm glad to share that with everyone as I move along. But if you're using this system, I'd love to hear from you as well about how you're kind of moving into this world and providing really powerful, personalized conversation and support for people. So the second thing that I learned this year that I already knew, but I feel like I learned it at a different level because I worked on a number of SEO projects. And most of you know from listening to me, especially again on previous live calls, talk about search engine optimization, I've really moved into a place where I don't think SEO is necessarily its own service area anymore. I feel like search engine optimization is now this larger perspective that has to do with gaining more authority for your whole online presence. And when you do that, it means you have to employ a number of different strategies and a number of different approaches. And potentially, if you hire a company to do it, you have to hire them to do a number of different services. There's not one thing they're going to do to SEO your website. There's not even like 2 or 3 things they're going to do to really run the campaign. It's going to be this long game where you are working on different things every month. And like I said, you're employing strategies that are related to PR, social media, partnership marketing, advertising. There's all these different things that now impact whether or not your online presence, not just your website, is truly authoritative, valuable, and relevant. And so I think we have to get this sort of bigger picture. And in pursuing that bigger picture with a lot of the clients that I work with and the students that I work with, what I found is that if you can understand how your website is performing on Google, that becomes so key to driving the strategy that you put together. So it's funny because in the SEO industry, one of the things I think that's most tough is how to price these services when you're selling them, because so many things are shifting and changing. So many things are unique to each different client that you work with. And it becomes hard to say, I'm going to sell everybody this one package, right? Because that package may not apply to half of the people that come to you. And I think part of the reason that that's become a more and more difficult thing in the agency world and in the professional world of SEO is because really performance guides strategy. where you are right now when it comes to your Google authority and your performance on the Google search engine directly relates to what we recommend. And so there is no like one size fits all list of best practices I can give people. Maybe if you're a startup and you're just building a new website, we have some basic technical things we can do, basic things that we can explain to you about how to use your website to the best of your ability. But outside of that, we really have to look at most companies, especially existing websites that belong to companies and organizations, and say, where are you at right now? How well are you performing? And where are the opportunities? So this is why I spend so much time talking in classes about why SEO is just the process of mining for the opportunities that you have to take some part of your authority to the next level. And so there's a few things that I learned in running some really awesome SEO campaigns this year and getting good results, right? So one of the stressors I think about being in the SEO world is, you have to do all this work, you have to spend all these hours, and you have to bill for them because it's work that you're doing. But it takes a while to get the results, and you don't really know the power of the work you're doing until a month or a few months have gone by. And that becomes, I think, something that's always in the back of your mind. Am I going to be able to prove through the metrics that the work that I did really created a result? And I was able to really accomplish that with the small group of clients that I work with throughout the year, because I always want to stay relevant. So I'm always testing different things. And I think there's a few things that you want to take away from this particular kind of idea. One, in order to increase Google search engine traffic, which means if you want more people finding you on Google coming to your website, you have to spend the time identifying what has been working and build off that. Right? So authority is built over time through a number of different strategies and a number of different approaches. There's no one thing that makes it better or worse. There's a number of things that come together to make you stronger on Google. And so what you need to do is have a way of tracking that information so you can really say, here is where we have traction. Here is where we've built authority. And so if we put some energy into furthering that authority, we will probably see results faster than we will if we sort of start from somewhere where we either don't know what's going on or we just have, no mojo at all already happening, right? So this is when we talk about Google juice. It's like if you already have half a glass of Google juice, start there and build off the juice that you already have, because you're going to have a full glass more quickly, rather than coming to an area of your website or a topic on your website or whatever it is that is empty. Now we're starting from scratch. And I think we have to start thinking from this perspective. To me, it's really a big loss when I come into somewhere, if they just want kind of a checklist, then they're just going to go apply it to their website. They're not going to spend any time really digging into their stats or paying for a good tool to quantify it. And you can do a lot with Google Analytics and the Google Search Console. And I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to the Google Search Console, but they have been really upping their game the end of this year. The reports that I get now about all the websites that I build that have the Search Console in place are amazing. They email me these great roundups of our performance so I can see where we're gaining the traction on a regular basis. Even with those free tools, I think you have so much opportunity. And then you can also look into things like Moz or Ahrefs or any of the other SEO tools out there that will help you quantify your authority so that you can really understand where authority already exists. And even if you don't think your website is done that well on Google, trust me, if it's been around for 2 years or 3 years or more, there's something there to work with that you want to pay attention to. So we really want to start every SEO project, in my personal opinion, with a review of exactly what's going on with the website currently and really quantifying and understanding what we've achieved, even if it was unintentional. The other few things that I've seen made a huge difference. Improving usability on your website can have huge impacts. So my number one case study on this year was working with a client that I have out in Hendersonville that has a really amazing website about retirement. I have been working with them for quite a while on a consulting level and just kind of coaching them on different things. And essentially, when I first started evaluating all of their data, one of the things that we discovered is that half of their top 20 pages, about 10, I think it was probably 12 pages out of 20, were loading slower. They were loading at 6 seconds, 8 seconds, 12 seconds, right? But those pages were still getting the vast majority of the Google traffic from organic search, right? So I literally went to their developer right away in month one and I said, hey, these 12 pages, if you could adjust the usability on these pages, if we could get them to load in 3 seconds or less, if we could make sure that we have some key call to action buttons at the top, I think these pages will immediately do better because they're already getting attention from Google, but we're sticking on page, lower on page 1, top of page 2, because they're not performing optimally from a usability standpoint. And literally within 30 days of making those changes, we saw a bump in organic search traffic to those pages and we saw a bump in their rankings. So really, I listened to Google, I paid attention to what they were telling me, I made that change, and I could produce a tangible result right away. Right now, we've got longer things that we're building on that'll take months probably to see results, but this allows us to have these wins and know that the site can respond if we do the work. I think the other few things you want to pay attention to is edit, remove, and add content on your website really intentionally. I know I've had a couple conversations with people from Justin's agency team about the importance of looking at what we're talking about, but specifically through the lens of content and specifically understanding which content on your website is already producing results and then taking that content again to the next level, seeing how you can improve the layout of the page, how you can keep it updated on a regular basis, always making sure that even if you think the content is old, if it's doing well in the search engines, don't get rid of it. Think about how you can adapt that content in some way and keep that flow of traffic coming into the website. Of course, you want to make sure that you're evaluating your content based on metrics. So again, use Google Analytics, use Google Search Console, get another SEO tool if this is something that really is a top priority for your business or organization, and really assign metrics. How are you going to define stuff so that every month you can go back through and look at what you've been able to accomplish? And like I said, I'm a big fan of having multiple tools. So especially when you're using free tools, none of them are perfect. Although Google Search Console is getting a lot better. But even if I wanted to use just free tools, I might install Google Search Console and the Bing Webmaster Tools, right? So I can just compare information. Always I'm going to get a better perspective when I do that. So keep that in mind. If you want to see more search engine traffic from Google, don't just take kind of a list from whoever about what you should do. Don't just read articles and then try to go step by step through those things. Really start from a place where you understand what you've accomplished. And if you don't know what you've accomplished so far, figure out how you can educate yourself about how to use the metrics to define things, how to look at your stats and understand what you've accomplished as far as authority is concerned. And the last thing I really learned this year that I thought was again, really interesting. And this was exciting because I applied this actually this week on Giving Tuesday when I ran a big fundraising campaign for a nonprofit that I volunteer for. And essentially on Giving Tuesday, there was this amazing opportunity for nonprofits at 8 a.m. PayPal and Facebook agreed to donation match any donations that you received before the money that they were offering ran out. So I want to say Facebook's was somewhere around 7 million. I think PayPal's was around 2. It started at 8 a.m. Eastern. And essentially, if you were running your donations that morning and you could get people to donate at 8 o'clock, they'll announce in January how much they are giving everybody. But everybody who took donations at that time, while the money was still available, basically they will match the donations. So that was a really exciting thing that we worked into our Giving Tuesday campaign. And I did a little bit of boosting on our Facebook fundraiser, especially the day before and the morning of. I also live streamed on Monday night and Tuesday at like 7:55 to 8:30. So I invited people, I cheered people on, I really got involved. I donated myself that morning at 8 a.m. So we really tried to build like kind of an experience with everybody. We were also doing email campaigns to our main supporters, asking them to make those donations right at 8 a.m. But the boosted posts that I did, I started out on Sunday, first running some things to broader audiences that I had targeted. And between Sunday and Monday, just looking at the engagement and what was happening, I could tell the ad was falling flat. I could tell it just wasn't hitting people. I was probably getting in front of people who don't know too much about our organization or are new to the concept of what we're doing. And so they weren't converting. They were looking at the information, but they weren't converting. And my concern was, we're running a campaign over Giving Tuesday. The number one thing we need is people donating at 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And I don't want to be paying for this ad to be in front of people so that aren't going to do that. So essentially what I did was go in, look at everything, and I made a big, bold decision on Monday to start running the ad only to the fans of our page. Because I really just started thinking through a lot of the things that I talk about, which is, okay, it takes multiple touch points to get people to convert. If I'm getting in front of too many people who haven't heard of us, I'm going to pay for some engagement, but we're not going to get the actual donations. And so wouldn't it be better if I took that budget for the next 2 days and I focused it entirely on our own fans, and I actually ran it all the way through yesterday and partially into today? Because the truth is, even if they didn't make the 8 a.m. deadline, they still might want to donate if they didn't get to it. So I just want to encourage everybody to think about this as part of their campaigning. People who are familiar with you, with your brand, with your services, your products, what you do, they are more likely to convert when they see ads. And I think it's important for all of us now to create campaigns that are specifically for the fans, that get them inspired, them motivated, and them excited. So whether it's boosting posts just for them, whether it's running different types of ads just for them around products or services, whether it's giving them a discount because they're a fan, whatever it is. I'm starting to think, and I have tested this throughout the year, but I'm really starting to believe in my heart that fans deserve their own budget when it comes to your advertising on social media, right? So if you've got a budget of even if it's $200 a month, make $50 a month of that for just sending content, sending messaging to the people that already love what you do, and give them some real focus and attention, because without them, you wouldn't be accomplishing anything in a lot of ways. So I see this question coming through the chat. Let me just pull down and see. So Aaron, I see here, could you give some metrics examples for the travel tourism space? What are ways you track engagement on website content, time spent on site, new users, info, request goals? So engagement on website content, and again, that's a little bit more specific than what I was talking about with Google authority, because when I talk about Google authority, a lot of times I look first at a search console to understand what phrases we're ranking for, which pages are ranking high in Google. When people find us in the Google search engines, are they clicking on our results, or are we just getting impressions? So I'm looking at impressions, clicks, and the click-through rate. And that tells me a lot about the authority of our website on Google. But as far as just engagement on your website content, which I think has to do, it's related for sure, because it has to do with the usability piece. Yes, a lot of times what I'm going to do is get more specific, because like the average time spent on site is a great kind of overarching metric, but what really matters to me is the time spent on each page. So as I create pages of the website, I create them for a reason, and I want to make sure that the pages I created that I want to keep people on, or the pages that I created where I want them to visit that page and then go to another page, that I really see those actions. And so I use time spent on each individual page, going through like the behavior section, looking at our top pages, seeing how long people are staying, going into acquisition, going into channels and organic search, looking at the pages that are showing up and getting the most traffic from Google, how long are people staying on those pages. That's a really content specific way that I look at not just engagement on the website, but different types of content, pieces of content, and what's driving people to stay on the site. Or if you use something called the users flow, you can see how people enter the website, and then if they go from one page to another page to another page. So if I don't want people to bounce, I want to understand which pages are pushing them to go deeper into the site, and which pages they're hitting and kind of leaving, and making sure, because that's what bouncing is, hitting the page and immediately leaving. And so I want to make sure that, the pages where people are bouncing are appropriate, and the pages where they continue to other pages through the flow are appropriate in meeting my goals. So I think for travel tourism, those are some key things that I pay close attention to from a content perspective. And that's because, like I said, we might be writing blogs, we might be creating different pages on the site for different purposes. We might be, like I said, getting people to come from social media, but getting people to come from Google, getting people to come from referral sites. And I can basically go in, see which pages are dominating in each one of those channels, understand how long people are staying on those pages and what they're doing on those pages to a certain extent, so that I can see which content is actually just producing the best results. So does that make sense? I know that's really specific. But for me, looking at the larger stuff, just like time spent on site, the number of new users, those are great in the bigger picture. Like I might look at those once a quarter or at the end of the year, really look to see if we reached, the number of new users that we wanted. But to me, that stuff doesn't tell me a lot about the true engagement on the website, what's working and not working, and which content has really been worth our efforts. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have more questions, I'm glad to stay a little longer. But I know that some people have to head out. So thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Please let us know if you have any other questions. You can always reach out to me at sarah@jbmediagroupllc.com. I've also put in a slide with some of our offerings coming up. So if you want to learn more about this and how to do your tracking, how to figure out the answer to some of these questions that I just mentioned, please feel free to check out our course called the Content Strategy Roadmap. It teaches a lot of the things that I just mentioned about analytics and authority and things like that. But overall, we're just really grateful everyone is here joining us. Please consider joining us next month on January 8th instead of the 1st, since that's New Year's Day. And we'll be having a great conversation about brainstorming and strategizing your campaigns for 2020. But thank you all so much for being here, and I look forward to talking to you again next year. Have a great day.